Kayamika laughed and puffed smoke into Opeyemi's face. Opeyemi coughed again. What's wrong? Can't you take a joke? I didn't know you smoked. Kayamika shrugged. Oh yeah. I like to have a puff or two in between meals. Opeyemi looked at the other girls, and they looked away. They didn't seem to mind that Kayamika was smoking. Do you want to try it? Kayamika asked, holding out her cigarette. Opeyemi stared at her, feeling confused. I don't smoke. Kayamika shrugged again. Long time ago, there was a girl named Opeyemi. Opeyemi grew up in a loving family with two younger brothers. She was a shy, introverted girl who always liked to keep to herself and read books. She had few friends in school, but she got along well with everyone. Her parents were good Christians who prayed together with their children every morning. They taught their children good manners and values that would guide them on their path. Opeyemi grew into a good girl who always did the right thing and made her parents proud. When Opeyemi turned 17, her father received a posting to a new state. He was a government employee, and his job required him to travel and live in different cities for his work. So, he decided to relocate to the new state, and Opeyemi would have to leave her old school and enroll in a new one. Opeyemi cried when she learned that she would have to leave her friends and school behind. She had always liked her school and teachers, and she liked learning new things. But it was decided. They packed their things into a lorry and drove to their new home. Opeyemi started a new school, and she soon found herself lost in a sea of new faces. She missed her old friends and felt lonely and alone. She soon noticed a group of girls who seemed to be the popular ones in school. They always wore makeup and fancy clothes and jewelry, and they always seemed to have the last word. They would smoke in the toilets and laugh when anyone tried to tell them off. Opeyemi liked to read books and write stories, and she hated anyone who tried to smoke in her presence. She would have nothing to do with the girls, but they didn't seem to care. One day, after school, Opeyemi found herself walking behind them. They seemed to sense her presence, and they turned to look at her. One of them smiled and waved at her. Hey, you're the new girl, right? She said. What's your name? Opeyemi was taken aback. She wasn't used to anyone talking to her directly. She just stood there, frozen. I asked you a question, the girl said, sounding impatient. What's your damn name? Oh, my name is Opeyemi. The girls laughed. Oh, that's a funny name, one of them said. We haven't heard that one before. Opeyemi felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. She was about to walk away when the girl who had first spoken to her held out her hand. Wait, I'm not trying to insult you. My name is Kayamika, and these are my friends, Ifyinanya and Kechi. We don't mean to be rude, but we just don't hear many funny names these days. What are you studying? Opeyemi hesitated for a moment, and then she walked up to the girls. They smiled at her and offered her their hands. I'm studying literature, Opeyemi said. Oh, you must like to read and write, Kayamika said. I like that. Maybe we can hang out sometime and talk about books. Opeyemi smiled. I would like that very much. The girls smiled back at her, and she felt happy for the first time in weeks. Opeyemi and the girls became fast friends. They would study together, play together, and even have lunch together. Opeyemi loved Kayamika and her friends because they made her feel wanted. They would always include her in their activities, and they never made her feel like an outsider. They were nice and kind to her, and she thought they liked her too. One day, they invited her to come to the mall with them after school. Opeyemi eagerly agreed. She loved going to the mall with her mother when she was little. She liked the bright lights and the sounds of laughter. She liked to watch children play in the arcade, and she loved the smell of the popcorn. But the girls didn't seem interested in going to the arcade. They walked past it quickly, laughing and joking. They soon came to a cinema. Let's go see a movie, Ifyinanya said. There's this new film I want to see. The girls quickly bought tickets and popcorn, and soon they were sitting in the dark cinema, munching on popcorn and watching a romantic comedy. After the film, the girls decided to go to the food court. They ordered pizza and fries and sat down to eat. Opeyemi looked around, feeling happy to be out with her new friends. She was startled when Kayamika lit a cigarette and inhaled. She coughed and her eyes watered. "What the hell?" Opeyemi asked, shocked. Kayamika laughed and puffed smoke into Opeyemi's face. Opeyemi coughed again. "What's wrong? Can't you take a joke?" "I didn't know you smoked." Kayamika shrugged. "Oh yeah. I like to have a puff or two in between meals." Opeyemi looked at the other girls, and they looked away. They didn't seem to mind that Kayamika was smoking. "Do you want to try it?" Kayamika asked, holding out her cigarette. Opeyemi stared at her, feeling confused. "I don't smoke." Kayamika shrugged again. "Suit yourself." Then the girls decided to take Opeyemi clubbing. They all huddled in the back seat of a taxi, smoking cigarettes and drinking a bottle of beer. Opeyemi was shy at first and tried to beg off, but the girls teased her into taking a puff from the cigarette and a swig from the beer. She coughed at the cigarette, but she didn't want to be teased again, so she kept quiet. The beer burned her throat and she choked on it, but they laughed and said that was how it always felt when you took your first drink. Then they laughed and laughed as they smoked and drank. Opeyemi had never been to a party before. Her parents didn't allow her to attend parties, and the other kids in school never invited her. She thought they didn't like her because they thought she was boring. She was excited at the thought of going to a party, so she agreed to go. They went to an apartment on the top floor of the building. The girls invited some boys over, and they all drank and smoked. Opeyemi tried not to cough or choke anymore, and she started to feel dizzy and drowsy from the smoke and drink. One of the girls took Opeyemi's phone from her pocket and dialed a number. She whispered into the phone for a few minutes and then handed it back to Opeyemi. Then they all started to laugh again. The door opened, and a man in his 40s walked in. He was dressed in a suit and he looked very wealthy. He smiled at the girls and winked at Opeyemi. "Good evening, my dear girls," he said in a smooth voice. "I see you have a new friend. What's her name?" "Her name is Opeyemi," one of the girls said. "Oh," the man said, looking at Opeyemi with interest. "That's a nice name. You're so beautiful, my dear." Opeyemi blushed and looked down at her feet. She felt very shy. The man walked over to her and lifted up her face. He looked into her eyes and smiled. "I want to make you feel happy, my dear," he said. "You are so beautiful, and I know you deserve to have a good time. That's why I want to give you this gift." He reached into his pocket and brought out a small white packet. He opened it up and Opeyemi saw a white powder inside. He dipped a finger in it and rubbed it on his gums. "You try it too, my dear. It will make you feel like you're flying." Opeyemi didn't want to take the drug, but he insisted until she finally relented. He dipped his finger in the powder and rubbed it on her gums. It felt cool and tingled in her mouth. Then she started to feel like she was floating in the air. She laughed and laughed and laughed. The man kissed her on the lips, and he felt something wet on them. He pulled back and looked at Opeyemi in surprise. She was crying, tears streaming down her face. She hugged her knees to her chest and buried her face in them. "What's wrong, my dear?" the man asked, feeling very awkward. Opeyemi shook her head and wiped away her tears with her hand. "I don't know what happened," she sobbed. "I started to feel something that felt like love in my heart, and then I felt sad and alone. I want to go home." The man looked at the other girls, and they shrugged. He sighed and called his driver. "Take this girl home," he told him. "I will see you girls another time." Opeyemi fell asleep in the car, her head resting on the window. When she woke up, she saw that she was in a room that was not her own. She sat up quickly, feeling scared, and that's when she saw her father sitting on the bed beside her. He smiled at her and stroked her hair. Opeyemi felt guilty, so she looked away. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I shouldn't have gone with those girls. I don't want to do that again." Her father smiled again and hugged her. "I know you don't, my dear. You're a good girl, and your mother and I trust you to make good choices. That's why we never stopped you from doing the things you wanted to do. But now you've learned that some things are not good for you, and we can help you make better choices in the future. We love you, my dear." He kissed her on the forehead. Opeyemi hugged him back, feeling happy and safe. Moral lessons. 1. Some things that may seem fun and exciting at first can cause harm to you in the long run. Be cautious of things that make you feel dizzy, drowsy, or feel like you're floating in the air. 2. If you ever feel lost and alone and you don't know who to turn to, there is always hope. Your parents may not be the coolest people, but they love you and want you to be happy. 3. Sometimes you can't tell what something tastes like until you try it. But if it burns your throat, makes you cough, or makes you choke, it's not good for you. Always be cautious of something that hurts you, whether it's a thing or a person. Just say no. 4. Bad company corrupts good manners, so check your friends.